Hi, everybody. I'm Lori Johnson, CBN's medical reporter, here to answer your coronavirus questions. Joining me today is neurologist and best-selling author Dr. David Perlmutter, whose latest book is called Brainwash. Welcome, Dr. Perlmutter.
Lori, always great to be with you.
Well, before we get to the email questions, I wanted to ask you about remdesivir. We've heard so much about it in the last week. Why all the excitement if the new research only shows a 31% reduction in recovery time?
Well, all the excitement is because we haven't seen anything come close. So that's very exciting. There have been a lot of drugs looked at and talked about, but now when there's been some really good science, remdesivir does show some improvement, a 31% reduction in recovery time, as you mentioned. But that's a big deal. That means a 31% quicker to get out of the hospital. That means have access to the intensive care unit for other people who may need it. We know that mortality correlates with how long you're in the hospital. The actual new study that came out on remdesivir did not look at mortality, but I think it's quite likely that getting out of the hospital sooner will be associated with increased likelihood that you're going to, number of people are going to survive. So it's not the home run that we would love to have, but it is really very, very good news.
All right, well, let's get to those email questions. Doris asks, is one object of life getting back to normal the creation of herd immunity?
Without a doubt. We see different countries around the world approaching their levels of restriction, et cetera, differently. And one country that comes to mind is Sweden. They've pretty well relaxed their restrictions. Most businesses are open, schools are open, and they are having pretty high rates of infection and high rates of death as well. But their plan is to kind of let it happen because the more people that are infected, the more people become immune. And their claim is that as many as a third of the people in Sweden may now be immune. Once that immunity level reaches around 60 to 70%, then it makes it less likely, significantly, that this virus will be able to persist. And that is the beauty of herd immunity. Herd immunity happens under two circumstances. Either people get a coronavirus and then get over it and become immune, or they receive an immunization. And it's number two that we just don't have access to as yet. So they have recognized that, and they are putting this plan into play. And I think it's really important for all of us to keep an eye on that and see how it leads, because they're planning or stating that they will likely reach a level of herd immunity in a couple of weeks from now. So something to keep an eye on.
Definitely. Very interesting. Well, Barry asks, if the virus dies in warm weather, why would it continue through summer?
Well, there's no real good evidence that it does necessarily become inactive in warm weather. We see right now in various parts of the world that are pretty darn warm that it remains active. We know that MERS was active in certain Middle Eastern countries when the temperature outside was 110 degrees. So we don't really have good evidence. We know that heat will inactivate it when it's treated with heat. But in terms of the environment being warmer, it would be great if that were to happen. But we're not seeing really good evidence that that is the case.
All right. Well, William emailed us this question. Is hydroxychloroquine safe?
Well, William, that's a very good question. We know that hydroxychloroquine has been used for many, many years around the world as a treatment for malaria. But we have to understand that there are some individuals who probably should not be taking hydroxychloroquine. We know that people with heart rhythm abnormalities can have a significant bad side effect from taking that drug. We also know that people who have a particular enzyme defect, a genetic defect, predominantly in males, called, sorry for this, G6PD-H deficiency. And that is probably the most common enzyme deficiency on planet Earth. Matter of fact, it's been estimated that about 400 million people have that enzyme problem. And if they take a drug like hydroxychloroquine, they can develop what's called hemolytic anemia, where basically their red blood cells are destroyed. So screening people ahead of time for both their heart rhythm by doing a simple EKG, as has been recommended in India, and also screening them for the enzyme issue, I think would go a long way towards determining who is relatively safe to go ahead and take hydroxychloroquine. But the real issue is it hasn't been found to be significantly effective. So that said, I think when we see proof of effectiveness, like we talked about a moment ago, remdesivir, that's a place where we really should concentrate our efforts in terms of treating this illness.
All right, Michael wants to know, do we need to sanitize canned goods when we bring them into the house?
It's a great question. You know, the early information said that the virus can remain active on plastic and metal surfaces for 2 or 3 days. Now, does that mean that it is therefore infectious? We don't know the answer to that, but why take the chance? If you're going to handle things like cans and plastic things that you bring into your home, you can easily sterilize them with a wipe or soap and water, just like you do with your hands. The key here is once you have contact with these objects, the best thing to do after that, and you know what I'm about to say,
wash your hands.
You bet. The vector is touching a contaminated surface, like a doorknob, like something you brought into your house, and then touching your face. So the key here is, again, as everyone has heard, continuing to wash your hands frequently with soap. The virus is wrapped up by a lipid or fat layer. And we know that soap breaks down fat. It's the reason it gets the grease off of our dinner dishes. So soap and water is a really powerful ally in this whole experience.
Well, that's all the time we have for now. Our thanks once again to Dr. David Perlmutter. If you'd like to hear more from Dr. Perlmutter, check out his website, drperlmutter.com. Thank you, Dr. Perlmutter. Always great to see you.